Hi there, thanks for tuning into lesson 2 of our three-part video series on the PMP application. So in this video, we're going to look at some exam myths. So these are maybe things that you believe or heard about, and we're going to look at why they may not necessarily be true. And we're going to look at some common mistakes that the test takers make and how you can avoid them for yourself. So the first myth that we're going to look at is reading the PMBOK by itself will allow me to pass the exam. So although it's true that you do need to read the PMBOK because that's what the exam is based on and it's going to give you a good idea of what kind of concepts you may be tested on, reading the PMBOK by itself will very unlikely help you pass the exam. And here's why. The team of professionals writing the book and the team of professionals writing the test questions are totally separate teams and they rarely communicate with each other. And that's something that not many people actually know. So, what this causes is that there's a huge disconnect between what's written in the book and what the test questions actually are. So, reading the PMBOK by itself will very unlikely help you pass the exam. The second myth we'll look at is I need to look at, read, and study everything I need to find before my actual exam. So you can take this approach and pass, but it's probably not the best use of your time. So let me give you an example. Let's take WBS, or work breakdown structure. The definition for this term really doesn't change that much between textbook 1 to textbook 2 to textbook X. So if you read 10 different textbooks, you're really just reading the same things 10 different times. And this is probably not the best use of your time. What's a better approach is just picking 1 to 3 sources and sticking with those instead. At Exam PM, we offer a very comprehensive course that will prepare you for the PMP certification. Let's talk about one of the biggest mistakes that test takers can make, and that is not doing enough practice questions. I cannot stress this point enough. You have to do practice questions. There is really no substitute. You can't go in with the assumption that you can just read the book, read many books, and understand all the concepts conceptually and think that you can ace the exam. You really can't. And here's why. Many of the questions on the PMP exam are situational. So you not only have to understand the concept, you have to know how to practice them. And the only way that you're going to learn how to practice them is by doing practice questions. The second mistake we'll look at is not using the first 15 minutes wisely. So what do I mean by that? So before your actual 4-hour exam starts, you have the first 15 minutes to watch a tutorial on how to use the prometric system. Generally, people don't need the full 15 minutes to finish the tutorial. So what I suggest is use the remainder time, which is somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes, to write down some study notes in the 2 pieces of scrap paper that you have. So it could be any formulas you may need, or any charts, or any diagrams, anything you think you may find useful for the remainder of your exam. Let's do a recap of what we learned in this video. First, we looked at myth number 1, which is reading the PMBOK by itself will allow me to pass the exam. So we looked at why this may not necessarily be the case, because the team who's writing the PMBOK guide and the team who's writing the exam questions are actually 2 separate teams who rarely communicate with each other, and this leaves a gap between what's in the PMBOK and what's in the exam. And then we looked at myth number 2, which is I need to look at, study, and read everything I can find about the PMP before my exam. We saw how this is probably not the best use of your time because you're going to be looking at a lot of duplicate material, and it's probably a better use of your time to just stick with 1 to 3 sources. The biggest mistake a test taker can make on the exam is not doing enough practice questions, because the PMP exam is highly situational. And the second mistake is not using the first 15 minutes wisely when they could be using that time to draw some study notes for themselves that they can then use for the remainder of the exam. So I hope you found this video informative and useful, and I'll see you tomorrow in lesson 3. Thank you.